Curator Vethanel had worked in the Grand Repository of Galactic Heritage for 412 years. She had cataloged artifacts from 900 species. She had held objects that remembered the birth of stars. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so she thought. The human delegation arrived on a gray morning when the twin suns of Terminus Prime hung low in the purple sky. Vethanel watched them walk through the repository's main entrance. There were 6 of them. They moved with careful steps and spoke in quiet voices. They treated their sealed containers like sleeping children. This was strange. Most species sent their artifacts with junior staff and shipping manifests. The humans had sent an ambassador. Ambassador Chun was a small woman with silver hair and dark eyes that seemed to hold secrets. She smiled when she saw Vethanel waiting at the intake station. "Curator," she said, "thank you for receiving us personally." Vethanel extended her 4 arms in the traditional greeting of her people. "The repository welcomes Earth's contribution. You honor us with your presence, Ambassador. Though I confess curiosity, it is unusual for diplomats to accompany cultural shipments." Chun's smile grew slightly wider. These items required careful handling. We wanted to ensure proper context. Context. An interesting word choice. Vethanel made a mental note. The unpacking took 3 hours. Vethanel cataloged each item with the precision that had earned her the senior curator position. There were paintings and sculptures. There were musical instruments and written documents. There were tools and weapons and items of personal adornment. Each one was beautiful in its own way. Each one told a story of a young species finding its voice among the stars. Then they opened the final container. Inside, resting on preservation foam, lay a sword. It was not impressive to look at. The blade was green with age. The handle had rotted away long ago, replaced by museum mounting. Corrosion marked its surface like old scars. Vethanel scanned it with her dating equipment. The machine hummed. The machine beeped. The machine displayed an error message. She frowned and ran the scan again. Same result. "Is there a problem?" Ambassador Chun asked. She had been watching closely. "A calibration error, I think." Vethanel adjusted the settings and tried a 3rd time. The machine gave her the same reading. Strange. The equipment insists this artifact is approximately 3,200 Earth years old. That sounds correct. Vethanel looked up. "Ambassador, the Galactic Council was founded 2,847 standard cycles ago. Your sword predates our civilization's greatest achievement by several centuries." Chun nodded. "Yes, we know. But humanity only achieved spaceflight within the last 300 years. How can you possess an artifact older than interstellar civilization itself?" The ambassador's expression remained pleasant and calm. "Curator, we were making swords long before anyone in this galaxy was making treaties. This particular blade belonged to a young man in a place we once called Egypt. He received it when he completed his training and entered adulthood." She paused. "A graduation gift. From his father." Vethanel stared at the ancient weapon. Her mind struggled to process the timeline. When her own ancestors were first learning to build shelters from the wind, humans were already forging metal. When the Galactic Council was signing its founding charter, humans had already been teaching their children the art of war for over 1,000 years. "I do not understand," she admitted. "Your species was so advanced so long ago. Why did it take you so many additional millennia to reach the stars?" Ambassador Chun reached out and touched the display case gently. Her fingers left no prints on the protective surface. "We were not advanced, Curator. We were simply old. There is a difference." She withdrew her hand. "We had to learn everything the hard way. Every single lesson. Every single time." Vethanel wanted to ask more questions, But the ambassador checked her timepiece and announced that the delegation needed to depart. There were meetings with the council, ceremonies to attend, hands to shake and treaties to finalize. Before she left, Chun turned back one final time. "If you want to understand us," she said, "look at what we sent you. Not just the beautiful things. Look at all of it. And remember that everything in these containers costs someone something. Nothing we make comes free." Then she was gone. Her footsteps faded down the long corridor. The doors sealed behind her. Vethanol stood alone with humanity's history. She spent the next several days examining every item the humans had provided. The paintings showed wars and weddings, funerals and festivals. The sculptures depicted gods and monsters, heroes and ordinary people. The documents contained poetry and laws, prayers and propaganda. And everywhere, woven through everything, she found evidence of time. Deep time. Time measured not in generations, but in geological ages. A ceramic fragment from something called Jomon culture. The dating equipment said 14,000 years. A flute carved from bone, 40,000 years. A collection of shaped stones that humans had once used as tools. The machine could barely process the result. Over 100,000 years. Vethanol sat in her office and tried to comprehend what she was seeing. Her own species had existed for perhaps 50,000 years. They had achieved spaceflight 8,000 years ago. Their history was a straight line from primitive beginnings to galactic citizenship. Human history was not a line. It was a maze. It doubled back on itself. It climbed mountains and fell into valleys. It burned and rebuilt and burned again. Empires rose and crumbled. Languages were born and died. Gods were worshipped and forgotten. And through all of it, humans just kept going. They refused to stop. They refused to stay dead. She pulled up humanity's official file in the council database. It was surprisingly thin. Basic information about their planet and biology. A brief summary of their recent technological development. A note about their unusual genetic diversity. Nothing about the deep past. Nothing about the sword. Vethanol submitted a formal request for expanded historical records. Standard procedure for new member species. She expected a response within a few hours. The response took 3 days. When it finally arrived, it was marked with a classification tag she had never seen before. Red symbols flashed around the message header. The words, "Contextual release only," blinked in an urgent font. She opened the message. It was short. "Dear Curator Vethanol, thank you for your interest in human history. The records you have requested exist and are available for review. However, we have found that raw historical data without proper framing can lead to misunderstanding. We would like to offer you a guided educational experience instead. Please confirm your interest, and we will arrange transportation. Respectfully, Dr. Sarah Concuil, Director of Antiquities, Earth." Vethanol read the message 3 times. Guided educational experience. What did that mean? Why would historical records need special framing? She thought about the sword. She thought about Ambassador Chun's careful words. She thought about the strange weight in the ambassador's eyes when she spoke about lessons learned the hard way. Something was happening here. Something important. Humanity was not simply joining the Galactic Council. They were revealing themselves slowly, carefully, like a creature emerging from a long hibernation. Vethanol was a curator. Her entire life was dedicated to understanding the past. She needed to know what the humans were hiding, not because she suspected danger, but because she suspected truth. She typed her response. "Dear Dr. Concuil, I accept your invitation. Please send coordinates. I want to understand. Respectfully, Curator Vethanol, Grand Repository of Galactic Heritage." The reply came quickly this time. Just a few lines of text and a set of spatial coordinates. Excellent. We look forward to meeting you. The first stop on your tour will be a small island nation in Earth's Pacific Ocean. We call it Japan. There is something there we would like to show you. A classroom of sorts. Please prepare yourself, curator. Human history is not comfortable, but it is true. And truth is the only gift worth giving. Vethnal stared at the coordinates. Her heart beat faster than normal. In 400 years, she had never felt nervous about examining an artifact. But humanity was not offering her an artifact. They were offering her a window into something deeper, something older, something that had survived long enough to leave scars on time itself. She began preparing for her journey. In the repository's storage wing, the bronze sword sat in its display case. Light fell across its ancient surface. The metal remembered heat and hammers. It remembered a young man's hands. It remembered a father's pride and a son's first steps into adulthood. The sword had outlived everyone who made it. It had outlived the language they spoke and the gods they worshipped. It had outlived empires and ages and extinction events. And now it sat in a galactic museum, waiting to teach its lessons to creatures who had never imagined such things could exist. The humans had sent their oldest memories first. They wanted the galaxy to understand something important. We were here before you. We will be here after. And everything we know, we learned in blood. The sword gleamed in the artificial light. Patient, eternal, ready. Vethanal's inquiry moved through the bureaucracy of the Galactic Council like a stone dropped in still water. The ripples spread outward. They touched offices and agencies that rarely communicated with each other. They triggered protocols that had gathered dust for centuries. Within a week, Senior Verifier Kothmaran received orders to investigate. Kothmaran was a Talaxian. His species was known for patience and precision. They had 6 eyes that could see across multiple spectrums. They had memories that never faded. And they had absolutely no tolerance for mysteries. He arrived at the Grand Repository on a morning when the weather systems were simulating gentle rain. Water fell from the climate dome in soft sheets. It reminded him of home. Vethanal met him at the entrance. She looked tired. Her forearms moved with less grace than usual. "Senior Verifier," she said, "thank you for coming. You submitted an anomaly report. I am here to resolve it." Kothmaran's voice was flat and official. He did not believe in social pleasantries. "Show me the artifacts." They walked through the repository's long halls together. Vethanal explained what she had found. The sword, the ceramics, the bone flute, the stone tools. Each item older than it should be. Each item pointing toward a past that seemed impossibly deep. Kothmaran listened without interrupting. When they reached the human exhibit, he spent 4 hours examining every item with his own equipment. He ran dating protocols from 3 different scientific traditions. He cross-referenced his results against galactic standard databases. Every test confirmed Vethanal's findings. "This is unprecedented," he said finally. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "These artifacts suggest continuous cultural development spanning over 100,000 years. No other council species has documented history extending more than 50,000 years. Most have far less. I know." Vethanal's voice was quiet. "I have been trying to understand what this means." Kothmaran straightened. "Decision made. I will contact Earth directly. This requires explanation from the source." The video call was arranged for the following day. Dr. Sarah Concuil appeared on the screen. She was an elderly human woman with white hair and skin the color of dark wood. Her eyes held the same strange weight that Vethanal had noticed in Ambassador Chun. "Senior Verifier Kothmaran," she said. Curator Vethanol, thank you for reaching out. I understand you have questions about our artifacts. Questions is an understatement. Kaufmoran's tone carried an edge. Your dating results defy expectation. Either your equipment is faulty, your records are falsified, or the Galactic Council has fundamentally misunderstood your species. Which is it? Dr. Concuil did not react to his hostility. She simply smiled with what like genuine warmth. None of those options, Senior Verifier. The dates are accurate. The records are truthful. And yes, the Council has misunderstood us. But that is not your fault. We have been careful about what we reveal and when. Explain. Dr. Concuil leaned back in her chair. Behind her, Vethanol could see shelves filled with old books. Real books. Made from paper. How much do you know about evolutionary biology? The human asked. Kaufmoran's eyes narrowed. I am a verifier, not a scientist. Speak plainly. Very well. Most intelligent species in this galaxy followed a similar path. They evolved. They developed intelligence. They invented technology. They reached the stars. The whole process usually takes between 5 and 15,000 years from the first permanent settlements to the first faster-than-light engine. She paused. Humans took nearly 100,000 years to make that journey. Why? The question came from Vethanol. She could not help herself. Dr. Concuil turned to look at her through the screen. Because we were not lucky, Curator. Other species evolved on stable worlds with predictable climates. We evolved on Earth. Our planet tried to kill us constantly. Ice ages, volcanic winters, droughts that lasted centuries, plagues that erased half our population in a single generation. She stood and walked to a map on her wall. It showed Earth's surface. Vethanol did not recognize the shape. The continents were wrong somehow. This is what Earth looked like when humans first appeared, Dr. Concuil said. The land masses were in different positions. The climate was completely different. We have survived so many changes that we barely remember most of them. Our bodies still carry the marks. Our genes still hold the memories. Kaufmoran processed this information. You are saying that environmental adversity slowed your technological development? Partly. But it is more than that. Dr. Concuil returned to her seat. Every time we built something, disaster tore it down. Every time we learned something, we had to learn it again. We invented writing 3 separate times on 3 different continents because the first 2 civilizations that developed it collapsed completely. We domesticated animals and plants over and over because climate shifts kept destroying our agricultural systems. She leaned forward, and her voice grew softer. Most species learn their lessons once and move forward. Humans learned the same lessons dozens of times. We paid for our knowledge over and over again. And eventually, that repetition changed us. It made us paranoid. It made us careful. It made us very, very determined to never lose what we had gained again. There was silence on the line for a long moment. Kaufmoran spoke first. You are suggesting that humanity's slow development was not a sign of inferiority, but of resilience. I am suggesting that we were forged in fire, Senior Verifier. Over and over and over again. By the time we finally reached the stars, we had already survived everything a galaxy could throw at a species. Asteroids, ice ages, supervolcanoes, pandemics, and most importantly, we had survived ourselves. What do you mean? Dr. Concuil's expression changed. Something dark moved behind her eyes. We mean war, Senior Verifier. We mean weapons that could destroy cities in a single flash. We mean hatred and cruelty and the systematic murder of millions. We mean every horror that intelligence can create when it turns against itself. She reached off screen and produced something. A photograph. Black and white. It showed a ruined city, twisted metal, shattered stone. A shadow burned into a wall where a person had once stood. This is what we did to ourselves less than 80 Earth years before our first moon landing. We built weapons that could end our species, and we used them. On each other. On civilians. On children. Vethanel felt her heart stutter. The image was difficult to look at. She had seen destruction before, but there was something about this photograph that felt different. Something personal and terrible. "Why show us this?" she asked. "Because you asked to understand us." Dr. Concuil set the photograph down. "And you cannot understand humanity without understanding what we have done to ourselves. We are not innocent, curator. We have never been innocent. We carry our sins with us always. We teach them to our children. We build monuments to our failures." She picked up the photograph again and held it toward the camera. "This city was called Hiroshima. We rebuilt it. The people who survived had children and grandchildren. And every year, on the anniversary of this day, thousands of people gather to remember what happened. To promise it will never happen again." Kothmaran's 6 eyes were all focused on the screen. "You preserve memories of your atrocities? We preserve everything, Senior Verifier. The beautiful and the terrible. Because the moment we forget what we are capable of is the moment we become capable of it again." The call continued for another hour. Dr. Concuil answered every question with patience and honesty. She explained human history in broad strokes. The rise and fall of empires. The slow accumulation of knowledge. The constant struggle between creation and destruction. When the call finally ended, Kothmaran sat in silence for a long time. "They are not what I expected," he said at last. Vethanel nodded. "No, they are not. They joined the council as equals. They smiled and shook hands and signed treaties. They acted like every other new member species." His voice carried something that might have been respect. "But they are not like any other species. They are something else entirely." "What are they?" Kothmaran stood and walked to the window. Outside, the simulated rain was ending. Artificial sunlight broke through the clouds. "Survivors," he said. "They are survivors. And they have been surviving longer than anyone realized." He turned to face Vethanel. "Dr. Concuil invited you to Earth, to see their history firsthand." He paused. "I will be joining you. This requires verification at the source." Vethanel felt something shift in her understanding of the galaxy. The humans had seemed so young when they first arrived, so bright and eager and new. Now she realized that brightness was not innocence. It was the light of a species that had walked through darkness and emerged on the other side. They smiled because they had earned the right to smile. They built museums because they had learned what happened when history was forgotten. She began making arrangements for the journey to Earth. Somewhere in the repository's archives, the bone flute from 40,000 years ago rested in its climate-controlled case. It was carved with symbols that no living human could read. It had been played by hands that had touched the first cave paintings. It had sung songs in languages that had died before the pyramids were built. And now it waited in the darkness, holding its ancient melodies like secrets. The humans had sent it as a gift, a small piece of their impossible past. They wanted the galaxy to know that the transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere on a morning bright with summer sun. Vethanel pressed her face against the observation window like a child seeing her first starship. Beside her, Kothmaran maintained his professional composure, but his 6 eyes moved constantly, drinking in every detail. Earth was beautiful, green and blue and white. Clouds drifted across continents like thoughts passing through a dreaming mind. Oceans sparkled with reflected light. The planet looked peaceful from space. Vethanel knew better now. That peaceful surface hid a violent history. Every mountain and valley had witnessed struggle. Every ocean carried the memory of storms. Their shuttle landed at a small facility in a place called Japan. A young human was waiting for them on the landing pad. He wore simple clothes and a warm smile. Curator Vethamel. Senior verifier Kothmaran. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect in his culture. My name is Kenji Tanaka. I will be your guide during your visit. Kothmaran studied the young man with his multiple eyes. You are a student? Graduate student. I study archival sciences. Kenji's smile did not falter. Dr. Concuil felt that someone my age might offer a useful perspective. I represent the generation that will carry human history forward. They loaded into a ground vehicle. The landscape rolled past. Mountains rose in the distance. Rivers cut silver paths through green valleys. Everything looked pristine and perfect. Where are we going? Vethanel asked. Kenji's expression shifted slightly. The smile remained, but something serious moved behind his eyes. To a classroom, he said. A place where we teach our most important lessons. The vehicle stopped outside a large building in the center of a city called Hiroshima. Vethanel recognized the name from the photograph Dr. Concuil had shown them. This was where it happened. This was where humans used their terrible weapon against their own kind. The building was a museum. The Peace Memorial Museum, according to the signs. People moved through its entrance in quiet streams. Families with children. Elderly visitors with solemn faces. Groups of students carrying notebooks. Follow me, Kenji said. And please, do not rush. This place requires patience. They entered. The first room was quiet and cool. Photographs lined the walls. The before and after images. A thriving city. A field of rubble. Vethanel's multiple hearts beat unevenly as she processed what she was seeing. One moment of violence. One weapon. One flash of light brighter than the sun. And everything was gone. Kenji spoke softly as they walked. 80,000 people died immediately. Many more died in the following days and weeks from injuries and radiation. The total number is difficult to calculate. We estimate over 100,000. Kothmaran's voice was strained. 100,000. In a single instant. Yes, and 3 days later, we used another weapon on another city, Nagasaki. Another 70,000 dead. Kenji stopped in front of a display case. This is what remained of a child's tricycle. The child was riding it when the bomb fell. She was 3 years old. Her name was Shinichi. She did not survive. Vethanel stared at the twisted metal. It was barely recognizable as a vehicle. Heat had warped it into something alien and wrong. A child had been playing on this. A small being full of life and possibility. And then she was ash. Why? The word escaped Vethanel before she could stop it. Why would you do this to yourselves? Kenji considered the question carefully. We were at war. A terrible war that killed millions across the planet. The nations that built these weapons believed they would end the conflict faster. Save lives in the long run. He shook his head slowly. Whether that was true remains debated. What is certain is that we crossed a line. We proved that humans could destroy cities with a single weapon. And once something is proven possible, it cannot be unproven. They continued through the museum. More photographs. More artifacts. A watch stopped at the exact moment of detonation. A shadow burned into stone where a person had been sitting when the light came. Clothing from victims. Personal items. Little pieces of lives that ended in an instant. The worst exhibit was the paper cranes. Thousands of them hung from the ceiling in colorful chains. Kenji explained that a girl named Sadako had been 2 years old when the bomb fell. She survived the initial blast. but the radiation poisoned her blood. She developed leukemia 10 years later. While dying in the hospital, she folded paper cranes. There was a legend that folding 1,000 cranes would grant a wish. She wanted to live. She died before reaching 1,000. But children around the world continued folding cranes in her memory. The museum displayed some of them. Tiny paper birds carrying the weight of grief and hope. Vethanel's vision blurred. Her species did not cry exactly as humans did, but moisture gathered at the corners of her eyes. She could not process what she was feeling. Horror, sorrow, something else she could not name. They emerged from the museum into bright sunlight. A park surrounded the building. Trees and grass and flowers. Life growing where death had reigned. Kaufmaran spoke for the first time in an hour. You built a park here, on the site of your greatest atrocity. We built a memorial, Kenji corrected gently. The park is part of it. Life is part of it. We wanted to show that destruction is not the end, that things can grow again. He gestured toward a structure in the distance. Do you see that flame? They walked closer. A large bronze structure held a fire that burned without apparent fuel. Tourists and locals gathered around it, some in prayer, some simply watching. This is the peace flame, Kenji said. It was lit in 1964. It will burn until every nuclear weapon on Earth and beyond has been destroyed. Only then will we extinguish it. Vethanel calculated the years. It has been burning for over 70 years. Yes, and it may burn for centuries more. We accept that. We tend it carefully. It reminds us of what we must accomplish. Kenji's young face held an expression far older than his years. This is how humans remember, curator. We do not hide our wounds. We do not pretend they did not happen. We build monuments to them. We visit them with our children. We make them into classrooms. Kaufmaran was silent for a long moment. His 6 eyes moved between the flame and the museum and the city surrounding them. Finally, he spoke. Your species created weapons capable of ending civilization. You used them. And yet you are still here. You rebuilt this city. You joined the Galactic community. His voice held something like wonder. How is this possible? Kenji considered the question. Because we chose to remember instead of forget, he said. Many species might have buried this history, might have destroyed the evidence and pretended it never happened. We did the opposite. We made it central to our education. Every Japanese child visits this place. They learn what happened. They learn why it must never happen again. He turned to face the 2 alien visitors directly. We did not reach for the stars despite this tragedy. We reached for them because of it. We knew that staying on one planet meant all our eggs in one basket. One asteroid. One supervolcano. One war too many. And humanity would be extinct. He gestured at the sky. Up there, we have room to make mistakes without ending everything. Up there, we can spread far enough that no single disaster can destroy us all. They walked through the park in silence. Cherry trees lined the paths. Their blossoms had fallen months ago, but their branches were thick with green leaves. Birds sang in their branches. How do you live with this knowledge? Vethanel asked finally. How do you wake up every morning knowing what your species has done? Kenji smiled sadly. The same way we have always survived. One day at a time. One choice at a time. We cannot change what happened. We can only decide what happens next. They reached the edge of the park. A vehicle waited to take them to their next destination. Kenji opened the door for them. Dr. Concuil asked me to show you what we do with pain, he said. Hiroshima was the first lesson. Understanding what we are capable of. The next lesson is about what we do with that understanding. Kaufmaran paused before entering the vehicle. What do you do with it? Kenji's smile changed. Something fierce and determined burned behind his eyes. "We prepare," he said. "We build vaults to preserve seeds and knowledge. We create backups of everything important. We plan for disasters that may never come. We assume the worst and hope for the best." He climbed into the driver's seat. Humanity learned a long time ago that hope is not a strategy. Preparation is a strategy. Hope is just what keeps us working on the preparations. The vehicle hummed to life. They began the journey to the next classroom. Behind them, the peace flame continued to burn. It would burn tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. It would burn while empires rose and fell. It would burn while humans scattered across the galaxy. And someday, perhaps, it would finally go out. But not today. Not yet. There was still work to do. The humans had learned their lessons in fire and blood. Now they were teaching those lessons to the stars. The galaxy had not known to expect teachers. But humanity had been teaching since before the Council existed. They had been preparing lectures for students who had not yet been born. The classroom was always open. The lessons were free. All you had to do was listen. The tour continued for 3 more days. Kenji took them to places that seemed designed to answer every question before they could ask it. First came Svalbard. The global seed vault sat inside a frozen mountain near the top of the world. The entrance looked like something from a science fiction story. A concrete wedge thrust out from the ice, covered in mirrors that caught the pale Arctic light. Inside, millions of seeds waited in frozen silence. Every important crop humanity had ever cultivated. Every variety of wheat and rice and corn. Every strain of vegetable and fruit. All preserved against catastrophe. The vault's director, a Norwegian woman named Dr. Helga Nordstrom, explained the thinking behind it. "We built this to survive anything. Nuclear war, climate collapse, asteroid impact, pandemic, whatever might destroy civilization on the surface. These seeds would remain, safe, frozen, ready to restart agriculture if everything else failed." Koth Moran walked between the storage chambers. His breath made small clouds in the cold air. "You planned for your own extinction. We planned for survival beyond extinction events," Dr. Nordstrom corrected. "There's a difference. We assume disaster will come. We prepare for recovery." Bethanol touched one of the sealed containers. Through the frost, she could see small packets inside. Each one held the future of a plant species. Each one was a promise that life would continue. "How long will these remain viable?" she asked. "Centuries. Perhaps millennia. The cold preserves them perfectly." Dr. Nordstrom smiled. "By the time these seeds fail, we expect to have replaced them with newer samples. This vault is not a tomb. It is a library. Libraries require maintenance." From Svalbard, they traveled to the Library of Congress in a place called Washington, the largest collection of written knowledge on Earth, over 170 million items. Books and manuscripts and maps and photographs and recordings. The accumulated wisdom of human civilization. And it was not the only such library. Others existed in London, Paris, Moscow, Beijing, Cairo, redundant copies of humanity's memory, spread across the globe so that no single disaster could erase them all. "We learned this lesson early," Kenji explained as they walked through the reading rooms. "The Library of Alexandria burned. Countless texts were lost forever. We will not make that mistake again." Next came CERN, the particle physics laboratory beneath the mountains of Switzerland. Here, humans had mapped the fundamental forces of the universe. They had discovered particles that explained how matter gained mass. They had created conditions that existed only microseconds after the birth of reality itself. The scientists who worked there spoke with quiet intensity about their research. They had spent decades peeling back the layers of existence. They understood things about the universe that most species never even questioned. A physicist named Dr. Raj Patel showed them the accelerator tunnels, kilometers of precision equipment designed to recreate the conditions of cosmic creation. "We built this before we had efficient fusion power," he said. "Before we had artificial gravity. Before we had faster-than-light travel. We understood the architecture of reality before we could properly exploit it." Kothmaran's eyes moved constantly, trying to absorb everything. "You mapped the universe's structure while still burning hydrocarbons for energy." Dr. Patel nodded. "Understanding came before application. We knew the theory decades before we could implement it. Sometimes centuries." He smiled slightly. "Patience is not usually considered a human virtue, but we have been practicing it longer than most species have existed." The final stop before Geneva was unexpected. A small facility in California that tracked something called Voyager. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 were spacecraft launched in 1977, nearly 50 years before faster-than-light travel, nearly a century before humanity met its first alien species. These small machines had been flying through space since before most current humans were born. They were now billions of kilometers from Earth, the most distant human-made objects in existence. And they were still transmitting, still sending data back, still working after all these years. "We built them to last," the facility director explained. "We knew they would outlive everyone who created them. We wanted them to carry our message to anyone who might find them." Each Voyager carried a golden record. Music and images and greetings in dozens of languages. A message in a bottle thrown into the cosmic ocean. "We did not know if anyone was listening," the director said. "We sent the message anyway, because that is who we are. We reach out. We hope for connection, even when connection seems impossible." Vethanel felt something shift in her understanding. These were not the actions of a young species. These were the actions of a civilization that had been preparing for the future for a very long time. Finally, they arrived in Geneva. The headquarters of Earth's unified government occupied a large complex near the old United Nations site. Secretary General Adaura Mbeki met them in her office. She was a tall woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that held exhaustion and determination in equal measure. Curator Vethanel, Senior Verifier Kothmaran. She shook their hands in the human fashion. "I hope your tour has been informative. It has raised more questions than it has answered," Kothmaran said directly. Secretary General Mbeki smiled. "Good. Questions are how we learn." She gestured for them to sit. The office was decorated with items from human history. A fragment of the Berlin Wall, a piece of moon rock, a flag that had flown during something called the Arab Spring. "You have seen what we remember," she said, "and you have seen how we prepare. Now, I imagine you want to know why we joined the Galactic Council at all." Kothmaran leaned forward. "That is precisely my question. Your species is older in wisdom than anyone realized. You have experienced horrors and survived them. You have prepared for every disaster. Why reach out to younger civilizations? Why risk entanglement with species that have not learned the lessons you have?" The Secretary General considered her answer carefully. "Because we remember being alone," she said finally. "For most of our history, we believed we were the only intelligent life in the universe. We looked at the stars and saw only silence. That loneliness shaped us. It drove us to keep reaching, keep searching, keep hoping." She stood and walked to the window. The city spread out below them. Thousands of people going about their lives. When we finally heard the first signals from another civilization, we wept. Literally wept. Scientists and politicians and ordinary people. We were not alone anymore. She turned back to face them. We could have made contact immediately. We had the technology. We knew the protocols. But we waited. Why? Because we were afraid. Afraid we would repeat our old patterns. Afraid we would bring our wars and hatreds to the stars. We needed to be certain we had changed enough to deserve membership in a larger community. Our voice grew soft. It took us 200 more years to feel ready. 200 years of watching and learning and preparing. And even then, we were not sure. Vethnal spoke. What made you finally decide to reach out? Secretary General Mbeki returned to her seat. We realized that waiting for perfection meant waiting forever. We would never be perfect. We would always carry our history with us. But we could offer what we had learned. We could share our mistakes so others might avoid them. She reached into her desk and produced a small crystal. It caught the light and scattered rainbows across the walls. This is why I asked you here. This is what we have been preparing since before the council existed. We call it the welcome gift. She placed the crystal on the desk between them. This contains the complete and unredacted history of human civilization. Every war, every plague, every genocide, every moment of cruelty, and every act of courage. Nothing hidden, nothing softened. The full truth of what we are and what we have done. Kothmaran's 6 eyes focused on the crystal. Why would you share such information? Because it is the only thing worth sharing. Secretary General Mbeki's voice was firm. Technology can be developed independently. Resources can be traded. Art can be exchanged. But lessons? Real lessons learned in blood and fire and loss? Those are precious. Those are rare. And those are what we offer to the galaxy. She pushed the crystal toward them. Every mistake we made is in there. Every path we took that led to destruction. Every choice we turned away from at the last moment. It is a map of failure, Senior Verifier. A comprehensive guide to everything that can go wrong when a species grows powerful before it grows wise. Vethanal reached out and touched the crystal. It was warm against her skin. You are offering to teach us, she said slowly. To teach the entire galaxy. We are offering to share our homework, Secretary General Mbeki said. We do not claim to have all the answers. We do not claim superiority or special wisdom. We simply have experience. More experience than we ever wanted. And we believe that experience has value. She leaned back in her chair. We nearly destroyed ourselves dozens of times. We came within years of extinction by our own hands. If even one of our lessons can help another species avoid a similar fate, then all our suffering meant something. Her voice cracked slightly. That is what we want. For our pain to have meaning. For our children to have died for something. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Kothmaran spoke. This is not what we expected from humanity. No. Secretary General Mbeki smiled sadly. It never is. The data crystal arrived at Terminus Prime 3 weeks after Vethanal and Kothmaran returned from Earth. It came in a simple container with no special ceremony. Just a diplomatic pouch like any other. But word had spread. The repository's staff gathered to watch the transfer. Council officials came without being invited. Representatives from a dozen species found reasons to be nearby when the crystal was officially catalogued. Vethanal handled the intake herself. She had earned that right. The crystal's contents were made available to the Council's educational archives within a day. The reaction was immediate and profound. Species that have considered humans to be naive newcomers suddenly found themselves reading about civilizational collapses that predated their own existence. They learned about wars fought with weapons no Council species had ever dared to develop. They saw images of destruction that made their own historical conflicts look like playground disagreements. and they found themselves asking questions they had never thought to ask. How did humanity survive the development of nuclear weapons? The answer was complicated. Mutual deterrence, near misses, luck, and eventually carefully negotiated reductions that took generations to achieve. How did humanity prevent their artificial intelligences from destroying them? The answer was sobering. They almost did not. There were incidents, close calls, systems that had to be shut down at the last moment. But they learned. They adapted. They created frameworks for cooperation between human and artificial minds. How did humanity unify a planet of competing nations? The answer was humbling. They did not. Not really. Unity came slowly, painfully, through centuries of conflict and compromise. They still had disagreements. They still had tensions. But they had learned to resolve them without violence. Most of the time. The consultations began within weeks. Species reached out to humanity through diplomatic channels. Not for trade or alliance. For advice. For guidance. For the wisdom of those who had walked through fire. Human historians became the most sought-after speakers at interstellar conferences. Human ethicists were invited to advise planetary governments on technological development. Human psychologists helped other species understand their own evolutionary blind spots. And at the center of it all, the Grand Repository expanded its human exhibit. What had been a single room became an entire wing, then an entire floor, then a separate building entirely. They called it the Human Experience Archive. Its purpose was simple: to show the galaxy what one species had survived, and to teach the lessons that survival had provided. Vethanal became its chief curator. It seemed fitting. On the anniversary of the crystal's arrival, she stood in the original exhibit room. The bronze sword still occupied its place of honor. Light fell across its ancient surface. The metal was dull and green, but something about it still caught the eye. Something that spoke of hands long dead and lessons long learned. A tour group entered the room. Young students from a dozen different species. They moved with the nervous energy of children everywhere. Their teachers guided them toward the displays. Vethanal stepped forward to address them. "Welcome to the Human Experience Archive," she said. "My name is Vethanal. I am the curator of this facility, and I would like to tell you about this sword." The students gathered closer. Their various eyes and sensory organs focused on the artifact. "This sword is older than the Galactic Council," Vethanal said. "It was forged approximately 3,200 Earth years ago. At that time, most of your species did not exist. Some of your homeworlds were still forming. The Council itself would not be founded for another 4 centuries. She paused to let that sink in. The human who carried this sword lived in a place called Egypt. He was young, perhaps 17 or 18 in Earth years. He had just completed his training to become a warrior. This sword was given to him by his father as a graduation gift, a symbol that he had become a man. One of the students raised a manipulator appendage. What happened to him? Vethanal smiled. We do not know. He lived. He died. He was forgotten. His civilization rose and fell. His language disappeared. His gods were abandoned. Everything he knew is gone. She gestured at the sword. Except this. This sword survived. It lay buried in sand for centuries. It was discovered and preserved and passed from collection to collection. And eventually, humans brought it here to share with all of you. Another student spoke. Why would they share something so old? Because that is what humans do. Vethanal walked to a display panel and activated it. A timeline appeared, stretching back through human history. They preserved their past. All of it. The beautiful and the terrible. the proud and the shameful. They believe that memory is the only teacher that matters. She pointed to various points on the timeline. Wars and plagues and disasters. Achievements and breakthroughs and moments of transcendence. Every species in this galaxy has made mistakes. Every civilization has done things it regrets. But most species bury those memories. They hide them. They pretend they never happened. She turned back to face the students. Humans do not. They build museums to their failures. They teach their children about their darkest hours. They carry their wounds openly, like badges of honor. The teacher of the group stepped forward. Curator, some would say that dwelling on the past prevents progress. That constantly revisiting failures breeds pessimism and despair. Bethanol nodded. Some would say that. And perhaps for some species, it would be true. But not for humans. They do not dwell on the past to despair. They dwell on it to learn. She walked back to the sword. This weapon killed people. It was designed to take life. But the humans do not display it as a celebration of violence. They display it as evidence of continuity. They are saying, look how far we have come. Look what we survived. Look what we became. She touched the display case gently. They joined this council not as students but as teachers. Not as newcomers, but as graduates. They have been learning for longer than we knew. They have been preparing lessons for students who had not yet been born. And now, finally, those students are ready. The tour group moved on to other exhibits. They would spend hours walking through human history. They would see the horrors and the triumphs. They would learn about nuclear weapons and moon landings, genocides and civil rights movements, world wars and peace treaties. And perhaps, when they emerged, they would understand something important. Something about the nature of survival. Something about the weight of memory. Something about the gift of hard-won wisdom. Bethanol remained in the sword room for a while longer. She often did. There was something peaceful about standing with humanity's oldest memory. A figure appeared in the doorway. Ambassador Chun, older now, her silver hair almost white. She walked slowly but steadily. Her eyes still held their secrets. Curator, she said, I heard you were giving tours personally today. Just this one room, Bethanol said. It still feels right. This is where it all started. This is where I first began to understand. Ambassador Chun came to stand beside her. They looked at the sword together. I spoke with Kenji Tanaka last week, Chun said. He completed his doctorate. He's joining the diplomatic corps. He will be part of the next generation, carrying our message to the stars. He was a good teacher, Bethanol said. He showed us the classroom. We have many classrooms. Chun's voice was soft. Every museum, every memorial, every scar on our planet's surface, they are all classrooms. And every human is a teacher. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. The sword's original owner, Bethanol said finally. The young man from Egypt. What do you think he would make of all this? Ambassador Chun considered the question. I think he would be proud, she said. He probably never traveled more than 50 miles from his birthplace. He probably never imagined that other worlds existed. He lived and died and was forgotten for 3,000 years. She smiled. And then we found this sword, and we remembered him. And now creatures from across the galaxy know that he existed. That he mattered. She reached out and placed her palm flat against the display case. That is the gift we give, she said. Memory, continuity, the assurance that what you do matters. That your life will echo forward through time. She withdrew her hand. The young man who received this sword is part of our story now. And our story will continue for a very long time. Bethanol thought about that. A single human life, brief and forgotten, now woven into the fabric of galactic history. One graduation gift, passed down through millennia, teaching lessons its maker never imagined. That is quite a gift, she said. Ambassador Chun nodded. It is the only one worth giving. Outside the window, ships from 100 worlds came and went. The galaxy continued its business. Wars were fought and treaties signed. Species rose and fell. The great wheel of history turned as it always had. But here in this small room, a bronze sword kept its ancient vigil. It remembered heat and hammers. It remembered a father's love and a son's first steps into manhood. It remembered a civilization that had died and another that had risen from its ashes. The humans had brought their oldest memory to the stars. They had offered it freely, and the galaxy was slowly beginning to understand what that meant. Humanity was not you,